Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sync Up Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things OneDrive. OneDrive is the home for all of the files that you care about most, and we are here to take you behind the scenes to get the insights and the knowledge to make your experience and your users' experiences better. My name is Stephen Rice. I'm a Principal Product Manager here on the OneDrive team, and as always, I am joined on video today by my fellow OneDrive aficionado, Arvind Mishra.
Hey, everyone. I'm Arvind, and I'm also a Principal Product Manager on the OneDrive team. I am also, like Stephen, so excited to be back here on camera. We've got a really exciting show for you today. Today, we have one guest and just one topic. So joining us today is designer Ben Trula from our OneDrive user experience design team. And today, we're going to be talking about designing Copilot on OneDrive. So Ben, it's really nice to have you here today. Please jump in. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
It's great to be here. Well, tomorrow I'll be celebrating my 25th anniversary here at Microsoft. So
Fantastic.
Worked on a few products. Yes.
Amazing.
You get a big piece of lucite for that, I think, right?
Yes. It's going to come in like 6 weeks or so, actually. They have to go to the Fortress of Solitude and chip it off of Superman's fortress. So anyway, yeah, I've worked on a number of products, and I'd say that Copilot is one of the more exciting ones, and one of the things that kind of brings me a little bit full circle.
Besides OneDrive, what is your most memorable product that you've ever worked on while you've been here in all of your 27 years?
The most memorable product, I think, was my first one, and it was called Auto PC. It had a screen size that was smaller than icons that we often use here. It was 256 pixels by 64 pixels. I had 8 wonderful bright colors, CGA colors for all of you who know what I mean, basically the brightest and hottest colors that existed, which is kind of a poison to designers, really. But it was fun because, part of it involved a speech interface. And so we kind of pioneered the use of speech menus there, which I think they used later on the Connect. And
when you say auto PC, you're talking about like PCs in automobiles? Like what?
It's a robot.
So Auto PC was a car computer,
Okay.
and we had partnered with Clarion, and they built the hardware, and it basically replaced the old DIN car stereos. And so it had to have a CD player, it had to have a radio. We included telephony, and it had navigation, rudimentary navigation, no GPS, obviously, but turn by turn, and speech, as I mentioned before. So you can take notes and even check your email, oddly enough.
Checking email while driving cars, maybe not the most safe.
Yeah.
Actually, if you need to be doing work in the car, I think the obvious solution is you should be listening to the OneDrive Sync Up podcast, because you're getting insights for your customers, and you keep both hands on the wheel, so you're doing the right thing.
Absolutely. I think that was one of the taglines was hands on the wheel, eyes on the road, because of the speech interface.
Oh, okay.
You could have it play email.
That's pretty cool. And so this was like a standalone product that Clarion would sell as part of this. Okay, gotcha. Was it ever built into any cars out there? Like straight away, like I could buy a car and get it as an extra or something, or?
Well, the automotive division became a division. It used to be part of Windows CE, which is more history there. But they worked on the Ford Sync.
Okay.
So
I remember that. I remember commercials for that. Okay.
Ford Sync, yeah.
Ben, we should probably talk about Copilot. And so just to kind of kick things off, bring us a little bit into our discussion today. Can you talk a little bit, what was your role designing for Copilot? What did that mean from just your perspective on how you impacted the product?
Wow. So Copilot is a community endeavor. There's a bunch of designers around the company that all work on creating this one unified experience, Copilot, that is an expert across, all of Microsoft 365 and Windows and Bing and that sort of thing. So part of it was being a part of this community and helping them stress test and define these larger patterns. I also worked with a brand new to the space engineering team that helped develop the platform pieces that we used in Copilot in OneDrive, and we had used some common components that are used everywhere in Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and Office.com. And so a lot of that was helping to educate and define what I like to call a conversational interface, which is slightly different from a graphical user interface, maybe a subset, I'd say.
Yeah. So what were some of like the big foundations of Copilot that, you and the kind of Copilot community worked on as you were starting to integrate into the product here?
Yeah. So one of the things that we did was leverage this common chat pane. So we used a lot of the lessons that we learned in places like Teams around communication, because essentially you're sort of talking to an agent of sorts. And so we used the threaded pattern in a chat pane so you could have that context of your OneDrive on the side. We also leveraged some other common patterns like an MRU menu for finding files, and some shortcut keys for bringing those up. And of course, just trying to, utilizing natural language within the interface.
So for folks that don't know what MRU is, it's most recently used menu, right? Like, okay, that's what I thought, because I was like, I'm checking for myself, actually. But I feel like you're glossing over like maybe some of the challenges, though, because you make it sound like super easy when you jam all these different Copilot teams from across the company, like from Word and from Excel and OneDrive and all of that. Can you, like, I don't think people will appreciate enough the amount of challenges that y'all had in just trying to get alignment across all of these products. Like, can you give us some insight into how you were able to accomplish that across all of these disparate products?
So yeah, of course, we need like a standard quality bar. It's like not like if you go into Word and you've got Copilot and then you jump over to OneDrive or vice versa, you don't want like things to move in alignments and then certain pixels to be off. I'm a designer, so I'm kind of obsessing over pixels and corner radius and all that stuff. And so we wanted to have a common language. And so keep that quality bar consistent. And so we use these common components. Some of those were like input cards, which are the cards that show up when you talk to the Copilot. And then the other are the output cards. And then what we call in Copilot, the latency card. So basically progress. So how does that progress show up? So these had common patterns, common typography, common corner radii, common shadows, all that.
Yeah. So Ben, I'm going to ask you what we in the business call a leading question. So you've got the chat pane, you've got all your common components. Yep. I can only assume that the moment we put those in front of our preview customers, they were like, this is perfect. No notes. Copilot is ready to go, right?
We were really excited to get it in front of customers. And we got it in front of preview customers and we waited with bated breath. And it was kind of a wah moment. Because even though we had a great quality bar and it looked great, we ran into a lot of problems. We faced this blank box that our customers were like, well, they had kind of two extremes. One was, well, I'm not sure what I want to write. And the other was, hey, give me the world,
Copilot, do my taxes.
Tell me exactly, do my taxes, and it, varying stages of success. And, when you're talking to, something like a Copilot, you think, oh, yes, it knows everything. But when it doesn't know everything, disappointment sets in. And so, yeah, we had to adjust quite a bit. So it was a learning moment for us, which, actually, these are moments that designers live for, learning moments, because design is never done. There's always something new to learn.
And especially something like Copilot, where, I'm going to link it back. You started with Auto PC and, this verbal interface. Now we're talking about Copilot, which is just a new paradigm, I always liken it to, if you put Google in front of a customer or a user who's never touched it before, there's like this whole like syntax that you have to learn of like, oh, how do I get good results out of search engines, Google, Bing, whatever it might be. I have to imagine Copilot is similar.
Yeah. There's that whole word, that whole phrase out there, prompt engineering. And that is like so not what we're shooting for. We're shooting for something that's more forgiving and natural. And really, so here's the thing. A lot of like those people that really wanted to ask for the world thought that Copilot at that time was like this tenured professor that knew everything. Really, it's more of kind of an intern at this point, and it's learning. It's going to get better and better, and as you use it, it's going to learn what you need more and more. It requires a little bit more finesse and a little bit more prompting, a little bit more guidance. And so that leads me to, well, how did we solve this? Well, designers tend to, you want to find rails. One of my old professors used to say, find your limits and it will set you free. And really it's finding your direction, your North Star, and it will set you free. And so we have these design principles. And one of them was adding value on familiar paths. And so one of the things that we ran into was in just a chat interface, focused on the chat interface, having them try to find in a little menu their file when their files were right here, right to the left of them. And so what we did is we added a Copilot command to every single file in your OneDrive. And so you can hover over a file, get that Copilot icon, and then get some actions. And we've cherry-picked actions that were highly, highly valuable and highly successful. Things like summarize a file, like, timed information is a thing these days. We want to be able to get to that information, and you don't want to necessarily go through the whole rigmarole of opening up a file and waiting for it to load. When you can get a summary, when your intern can read it for you, you can select a couple of files and use like the more menu or the context menu and say, compare these files. Let's say you're a hiring manager and you want to compare a whole bunch of resumes. You can do that and say, okay, well, which ones have like the X amount of experience and so on and so forth, because you get like hundreds and hundreds of resumes.
I have to imagine.
Not that you can do hundreds.
Yeah, I have to imagine that really helped with, I think you called it like the blank box problem of, if you don't know what Copilot can do, suddenly you see, right click, Copilot, summarize. Value in a nutshell, right where I'm already looking for commands. Like that had to have made a difference.
Yes, totally. Yes. Adding value on familiar paths. It's definitely helped us out quite a bit. And it also helped guide us with solving writer's block, which was you've just kind of landed into our second design principle, was solving writer's block and helping people understand what to write. You just don't meet somebody cold turkey and say, hey, can you do my taxes for me? Like you said, that's just not going to work. Right. And so yeah. Before, we had this little chat box, just to give an example of what it was. And it just said, ask questions in there, and that's another thing that we're also including as well is when you have these files selected and you do have a chat open, because you can just go ahead and ask it open into questions if you wanted to after going through those scenarios. You could it will have in there, ask questions about such and such file, or ask questions about the selected files. So it kind of gives you that clue that, hey, Copilot is really focused on what you've got selected and not necessarily the entire world of the web, or everything in your company or your school or whatever.
I mean, I love that principle in particular, because it helps focus the user, right? So that they're not going to have that bad first user experience. Like it's very limiting, saying, hey, this is what your intern can do really well. So now, stick with these 3 actions and you're going to have like a really good experience. I'm curious, what other design principles did you guys also think about?
So there's actually a very basic information design principle around focused experience and around line links. And that's what brought us to initially, when you go into these, the summarize experience, for example, or create an FAQ, which is one of my favorites. I mean, there's nothing like getting information in an FAQ format. But we launch a dialogue. And the reason for that is that we want to create, once again, that front and center focused experience. We live in a world where you're inundated with information. And we want to make sure that, it's right there, easy to read and digest. And part of that has to do with controlling the line length. So if you've got a bunch of little line breaks, it tends to break the concentration and makes the reading very interrupted and difficult. Conversely, if your line length is too long, then your eyes tend to tire out when they get towards the end of that that segment. So we launch in a dialogue, so it's a nice, easy experience to read.
This is one of those moments, Ben, where I'm not cut out to be a designer, because I would never think about line lengths. And here you guys are like, oh no, like if it's like this, it doesn't work. If you put it like this, it's perfect. I'm so glad we have folks like you to like figure that stuff out, because I could never do it.
Well, there's research. We all stand on the backs of giants of some sort or another.
Fair enough.
It's about enthusiasms. Also, too, in tables. So tables are great, especially in comparisons. And we automatically render a table when you're comparing files. And if you've got too narrow of a table, like if it's in the chat pane, for example, it just gets too
tiny.
It's even worse because you have columns, and so this just created a great experience for you initially to digest all that information.
I mean, it's really interesting because like so much of the Copilot UI across all of our other Microsoft services is that chat UI, and here you've got OneDrive taking kind of a different path, like actually just thinking through what that experience, like what the optimal experience would be for like compare or, like write an FAQ and giving the user a really good, a really optimal user experience, I would say.
Yeah. So there's one more principle.
One more principle.
That's very science fiction, and it really gets at like the true potential, the ultimate potential of Copilot, and that is transcending traditional UI. So right now we have this graphical user interface, and it's great. Use the mouse, it's familiar, and it's can be direct and everything. But with any system, you tend to get locked into the compartments and the actions that you build for it. And so it becomes trapped by its own weight, and you end up in a like kind of a tyranny of clicks. Copilot has a way using natural language to cut through that tyranny of clicks. And so ultimately, we shoot for features that allow you to break beyond that. Like imagine creating a summary. You'd have to break open that file. You'd have to like copy and paste into another document or into like a text file or another Word doc to just try and get that summary. Yeah. Plus, you'd have to use your brain when you've got Copilot.
You'd have to write it yourself. I was going to say
you'd have to write it yourself. Or even creating a table. It creates a table for you. So the idea there is to remove drudgery, take away those things that are just arduous to do, to free up your brain to think about the important problems.
But I want to dive a little bit further on this with you in particular, because in addition to being an amazing Copilot designer for Copilot, I don't know, whatever the right title is, you've also been one of like the premier accessibility champs on the OneDrive team. And so we'll come back to Copilot in a moment because there's some interesting dovetailing I think that occurs there. But can you talk about your accessibility chops and kind of that side of your work on the team?
Yeah. Thanks for adding that in. It's really driving me towards that thinking. Like I see Copilot as a great game changer. Where I said transcending traditional UI and in like spacecraft terms, I like can kind of call it like folding GUIs, folding graphical user interfaces, so you can cut across those barriers. Clicks are really really hard for people who are stuck, who use a keyboard traditionally and who use screen readers. Yeah, because going through all those steps just creates drudgery, reduces efficiency for them, and it really is like a big in employment thing. It's like they can't do their jobs and succeed and thrive. And so Copilot it has great potential to like cut across all those things and help them have a fulfilling career. So back to me, I started thinking about accessibility actually in 1997 before I came to Microsoft. I looked at my Mac when I was working at a marketing place, and I said, wow, if I lost my sight, how could I use this thing? And so that idea stuck in my head for many years.
Right.
And I came to Microsoft, of course, worked on Auto PC and thought, oh, there's a speech interface. And as I worked through different products like Windows, I learned about things like high contrast and Works, little like Office type suite of programs. Back in the early 2000s, I worked on keyboarding in dialogues. I actually did a little bit of coding there called RC files back in the day, if y'all know that. And so when I came to OneDrive, we had a young team, and my manager says, "Hey, can you help all us young designers around accessibility, because it's really important." About that time, Satya had become the CEO, and he stressed the importance of all people. And we also have these. We work with government agencies that require it, and so. I realized quickly that we don't have a language to design for this. You go to design school and they don't talk about these things, and the pure design is about an experience. It doesn't matter if you could see it, you could hear it, you could smell it, whatever. It's about people doing things and getting things done and having enjoyable experiences. And so I created this like visual or this language to illustrate our product gaps. That's awesome. People don't have disabilities; products have gaps, and our main gaps are around not being able to use a pointing device. So using keyboard, for example, or using different types of devices for interacting with controls, and screen readers. So if you can't see the screen. And so I helped develop that language so designers can design for these experiences. And then later on, a designer in the company looked at my language and created a Figma plugin. And I've since then been working on this plugin, the A11Y focus order plugin, that helps designers automate that process.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing, Dan. But you had a pretty illustrious background in as far as driving accessibility across OneDrive in particular. But tying it back to Copilot, what are your aspirations about combining two things that you love between accessibility and Copilot?
It can be an inclusive game changer. Finding files, for example, very hard for people who use a screen reader. Let alone using files, let alone doing what we call the CRUD operations, which is copy, rename, undo, and delete. Those are basic things, easy with a mouse, but not very nice for someone who uses a screen reader. And we can make these tasks a lot easier for people. Once again, we live in the age of information, and we're filling our own OneDrives up with tons of information. Copilot can help us.
All right. So Ben, we've talked through the kind of design principles you guys used to design Copilot. What are you excited for next? What's on the horizon for you?
Yeah. So really what's next on the horizon is helping people, like I had mentioned before, just deal with their body of information, their knowledge, and how they could get to that information more quickly, how they can keep their house in order, and like I said before about finding files, which is a great accessibility thing.
I think about I have a lot of documents, and sometimes I want to ask Copilot some questions, and it's considering the entire corpus of everything in my OneDrive versus maybe I want focus potentially, right?
Yeah. So asking questions on a folder full of files. Yeah. That is the logical next step. I mean, not just selecting files, but when you're in a folder, for example. Of course, when you ask questions, you can say, "Hey, across my company, can you find me information on the Acme widget or whatever? Personalized potatoes." I don't know.
Man, you can't reveal these secret projects. Personalized potatoes is tinted. No one can know. Arvind, if you wanted to learn more about the future of Copilot and OneDrive, how might you, as a prospective listener of the Sync Up podcast, find out more about that?
Well, in the show notes, we're going to have a listing for the next OneDrive fall event, where it's, I don't know if you saw the one last year that we did, where we showed off Copilot and OneDrive for the first time. We are actually going to be doing another one of those events, and we're going to be showing some things that maybe the world hasn't seen and will be able to use in the not too distant future. So look at our show notes for the date of that show, and please join us live. And the product management team and our design team will be there right after the show. It's virtual, answering questions. Everyone has benefited from your expertise across Copilot and accessibility here today. I think the audience really got a lot out of today's session. We just want to thank you for actually being on the show today. If people want to learn more about you, where in the social ecosystem can they find you?
On Instagram and on Threads, you can find me at, it's a mouthful to spell, but easy to say, Be Truthfulness. So BeTruthfulness. And on LinkedIn, I am Ben-Truelove.
Cool. And that people will know that they found you on Instagram if they find you in a unicorn costume riding bikes, right?
Yep. That's it's kind of a safety feature. It's kind of a fun feature. Yes, I do wear a unicorn horn and a tutu. Cars can see you. People can't be in a bad mood. And it keeps you from going too fast downhill.
I have so many questions, and yet I feel like that's a podcast in and of itself. But if you want to learn more about OneDrive, get the latest and greatest, you can check us out. Our blog is aka.ms/OneDrive/blog. You can find me on LinkedIn at srice08, and Arvind can be found at Arvind Mishra1.
And as always, we love hearing from you, our audience. You can reach us at Twitter. Our handle is @OneDrive. And if you've got a question, you just tag it with #SyncUp. And if we like that question, Stephen will actually send you a beanie. Wow. So you could have your own OneDrive Sync Up beanie, which is pretty cool. And even if you don't want to reach us there, you can also email us directly at syncupquestions@microsoft.com. You can check us out on YouTube at aka.ms/syncup/YouTube. And then for links, resources, and more, you can also find all of that stuff, including all the details around our October show that we're going to be having. And that's at aka.ms/syncup.
That's right. Don't forget to subscribe to Sync Up wherever you get your podcasts. If you enjoy Sync Up, if you find it useful, tell your friends. Word of mouth is one of the best ways to get people engaged with our community, help us grow the show. And if you're curious about other Microsoft podcasts, you can check out aka.ms/Microsoft/podcasts. As always, a huge thanks to Lisa for making this podcast possible.
Woo. Hey, and just because this is a video podcast on YouTube, we're supposed to tell you all to mash that button and like and subscribe our show here, and tell your friends as well. Exactly. Whatever you got to do to build our audience, build our army. But listen, thank you for listening to Sync Up. We've been your hosts, Stephen and Arvind, and we'll catch up with you next month.